All right, perfect. So next we're going to do kind of a fireside chat, and we'll do some Q&A. We'll try it. So I'll come around with a mic at some point and see if we can do some questions. But we're going to have Jason lead it. We're going to have Anu from Flipkart. So Anu, if you want to come on up, she's one of our awesome customers, going to talk about all the amazing things they're doing with large language models. And then we also, unfortunately, couldn't be here today, but have Ilan from OpenAI joining us remote. We'll see how that works a little bit with the technical aspect here, but yeah, really excited for this. And I'm going to hand it over to Jason, and we're going to jump in.
Cool. So Ilan was trying to make it out here all the way from New York up until a day ago. So thank you for giving the shot, and thank you for at least joining us for this moment here. Do you want to, Anu, do you want to start off and give an intro of yourself?
Yes.
And is that working? Yeah.
Cool. Hold it. I think that's better, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the great turnout. And I'm sure this is going to be an amazing session. I am Anu. I go by Anu, and I lead the R&D center for a startup called Flipkart. For those of you who do not know what a company Flipkart is, it's one of the biggest e-commerce players based out of India. We have, just to give you an idea of how big we are, we have close to about 600 million registered users of the platform. That is double the population size of the United States. So we operate at that scale, and essentially we're owned partly by Walmart, but we are still at a pre-IPO stage. So when the CTO came and basically asked me, hey, we try to use the latest technology and try to bring down my costs so that we can go IPO, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to basically jump onto that ride. And it has been a fabulous ride, basically, for me, both in the aspect of learning about the different aspects of culture, language, and consumer, which is very different from what we see here in the US.
That's awesome. And so, Ilan, do you want to give a little intro of yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Amazing. Cool. So my name is Ilan. I work as an engineer on the go-to-market team at OpenAI. And so what that means is I work with a lot of companies who are trying to use LLMs in production for their applications and find the best niches for each of their use cases. And this looks like this can be anywhere from like ideation to prompt engineering, design, like the architecture, to deployment, running evals, debugging, sort of the entire process. So just meeting companies wherever they are and getting them to ship something really, really cool.
Awesome. So I was going to start with some questions, and both for Anu and Ilan. I guess, can you describe like the challenges you face? I mean, I really do think Flipkart has one of the more scaled and complex in production deployments out there. What do you use OpenAI? What's your journey been like as you've been scaling that out?
Yes, it has been a fabulous journey working on this generative AI field with the advent of the large language models and advanced, multimodality aspect of it. In e-commerce, as you can imagine, everything is about, improving the customer experience and how closer you can take the experience to an offline store, where the sales assistant is basically hand-holding you and walking every step, basically curating all your needs. So it's not only about a search. With today's world, everybody wants a discovery, right? And a research and a comparison. So all of these things, aspects, is something that simple search cannot basically tackle. I lead the conversational commerce, as we call it, for Flipkart. As you can understand, given the scale, there is no way we can handle our consumers if we do not use the latest technologies. Flipkart, to me, is more of a technology company and next a retail company. They have always been ahead of the curve in using the technologies. So when this large language model boom kind of came in, they jumped right onto it. And we have been, working with all the large players. I still remember when we first went to talk to OpenAI, and they were like, you should go and work with Microsoft because you're operating in India and they can provide you large clusters over there. So kudos to OpenAI for coming out something like this. And I was just telling Jason and Ilan the other day that whatever we have done in the last 2 years, we wouldn't have been able to do in 10 years had this, boosting technology has not been given enough.
Awesome. So Ilan, do you think you could handle the scale today? I'm kidding.
I think we're working on it.
Awesome. Well, one of the, speaking of scale and stuff, one of the things you've been working on is like speed of speed of generation, speed of response. I guess maybe start with Anu. Just how important is speed of response to you and like the experience?
I think it's extremely important. You cannot expect a consumer to type a question and sit there for 3 seconds. It's a very, very bad experience. I mean, don't get me wrong, one of the largest e-commerce players do not have semantic search built in. It's not like they don't have the capability. It's just that we cannot afford it because of the catalog being so big and your indexes that you need to traverse. The turnaround need to be in like microseconds, right? Double-digit microseconds. Not even 3-digit. So it's very, 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 very hard to basically, figure out the semantics and then do that, additional human-like, conversation. And that is why I think latency is extremely important for us. Sometimes even more so than the accuracy.
Interesting. And I think from an OpenAI perspective, Ilan, you probably look at both. You probably look at like performance and evals as well as just pure, response time. How important is the response time as you're thinking? Like, it sounds like that's one area you spent a lot of time on this year with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually been working with a lot of clients, specifically asking me around like latency optimizations. And so we really went in depth looking at like different techniques we can use. Actually, this is very topical. I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I collected a lot of these like learnings into a single guide that I put on the OpenAI docs called Latency Optimization. And it's just 7 principles to really try to capture like every way you can optimize your application. Some of them are, like using smaller models. Some of them are like maybe potentially you don't actually need to use a model for a certain use case, or the perceived latency. There's a lot of really interesting work in that direction, and I do think it's very important. I think users feel a difference when something feels slow. I think we've known this for a while in the world of web dev, but it's equally as true for large language models.
Yeah, and I think you have like OpenAI kind of leading the way on that side, but then also I also feel like there's been an incredible amount that you've all have launched this year, like function calling, for example, where the industry kind of then coalesced around this idea. And I guess a question to the room: how many of you know what function calling is? Okay.
I can't see the room, so you're gonna have to tell me how many people raise their hands.
I would say about 5% maybe of the room, about 5%, maybe 10% of the room raise their hand on knowing what function calling is. Do you use function calling yourself at Flipkart?
Yes, because we have such a complex system, as you were, saying, right? We do need to figure out the intent and the flows based on, each of the functional. Based on the intent, you need to basically route your traffic to each of the functions. And that could be, as I was saying, it could be pre-purchase, post-purchase. There are so many other hierarchical functions within the pre-purchase scenario, within the post-purchase scenario. And then like it's a whole hierarchy of like knowledge traversal.
Yep.
And at the end of the node, essentially there is where the LLM is essentially sitting. So it's how you design an actual complex system in production.
Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know the function calling approach, but it's a common architecture these days is to have a router decide what you can't fit everything in one prompt and decide to go down some route to some other skill.
So yeah, what we do is basically, you have a router, you kind of take a question, understand the intent, And then there is a router with the registry. And you kind of, refer to that registry, okay, which of these functions this might then kind of fit. And then from there, you kind of browse the node.
Yeah, and then the router, probabilistically calls a function, which is kind of the OpenAI, released it probably almost a year ago, I would guess. In terms of, other things you've been really, I guess OpenAI has been releasing. I noticed recently you released like batch processing of data, which kind of fits in the labeling side. Is labeling dead? Is everything going to be automated labeling? And was that tackling labeling, I guess, in the first place?
Yeah, I think labeling is one of the things that you can do with this very well, but it's sort of a little bit broader for any sort of task that is not latency sensitive, that can have like a 24-hour turnaround or even longer. I think data labeling is one good example. Any sort of batch jobs where you're like pre-computing potentially like some sort of like data augmentation, or even running evals, right? Like running evals is actually like surprisingly expensive if you're using LLM as a judge sometimes. So the idea here is like allow like a cheaper way to do that. When you don't need the results right now and you maybe have like a very large fleet of evals, you could just run them and get the results back within 24 hours for, I think it's like half the cost. Oh, I see you guys now. This is incredible.
How's it going?
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. Awesome. Well, good to see you. Just so you all know, the batch. So what we're talking about is so OpenAI, typically there's a chat completion interface which you interface to, but they launched recently an ability to upload stuff as batches and run over batches. And I think the reason you did that, I think it's cheaper, like half the price or something. Was there a reason that?
Yeah, I think it's roughly half the price. I know we're still iterating on it. Like we're still seeing like, should we try like longer time horizons, like weekends? We're still exploring with it. We want to see like what people really want, because it also helps us plan load, right? If we have people scheduled in advance, we can like optimally schedule how much load we use when, and so we can use like downtime to run everyone's like computations more cheaply. And that's the main idea there, is to like more efficiently allocate compute and share the cost savings with everyone.
Awesome. And I think you hit on one other thing that we hit on earlier here was kind of evaluations. I guess Anu, how do you run any evals? How did you end up on your current layout?
So I think GPT-4 is the most precise and most latent model. So we definitely use it for any kind of data generation, any kind of labeling, any kind of evaluation that you can think about, right? We actually benchmark. Flipkart employs close to about 1,000 ops labelers back in India. And we benchmarked human-generated labeling quality to GPT-4. And GPT-4 definitely came out winning. However, for certain use cases, you cannot basically, especially in legal and policy kind of questions, you cannot kind of ignore because of policy reasons. You cannot just ignore or avoid those human, but you can expedite it, right? For example, you can generate the labels and just let the labelers kind of review it, right? So those are some of the places which I think we are using it regularly on a regular basis, and it is definitely improved our production cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's another VC-backed set of companies that OpenAI is killing. So what, as you think about the metrics, so I know like what as you think of evals, Anu, and for production, like what's important to you, and what do you all care about from an evaluation perspective?
I'm glad you asked it, right? So when you're working with conversations, it's very different from traditional search or how people have been doing conversational bots till now. Now it's a multi-term. So it's a success of a session, right? It's not only, and a session can have multiple LLM calls in it. So I like to, break up evals into 3 components. One is your DS component level evals, which is your function calling or the particular task that you're trying to do. Maybe it's a restructuring of the question, or maybe you're trying to understand the intent. But when you kind of get back the whole answer, that was basically, how was the quality of the answer? That's a qualitative thing, right? Where was it factual? Did it have hallucination? Did it actually address, the answer was in context of the question, right? So those are some of the new kind of metrics that we are seeing at a DS component level coming out. And in the conversation, then there are operational metrics. You want to basically reduce the cost, right? You want to reduce your latency. So how do you break up your prompts? How do you kind of modify a system versus your contextual prompt to kind of get that constant tweaking of it? And then there are your business metrics, right? For the product that you're trying to build. For customer support, you might want to improve your customer satisfaction, bring down your CTU, your agent cost. But for conversational assistance like search and recommendation and discovery, it might be how much of the engagement of repeat customers that you're able to run, right? So how do you kind of tie all these three metrics? And I have brainstormed a lot with Jason and Aparna from Arize, and we have definitely benefited a lot in kind of stitching the story from back to front, where, you know, we use the dashboard to basically see what is my business metric which is falling. And then it's very easy for me to go and see which is the question sets for which this business metric is falling, and then go back to the direct question and see what are the DS component level metrics or factuality or hallucination for that question statement. So just creating that trace back, the traceability is extremely important for someone operating at our scale. It's not manually possible. So any kind of traceability or observability, as you can think about, right, is essential to kind of keep that data work or the modeling work going forward and keep releasing new features.
Yeah, I think it's and then go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna jump in here with the I think we've kind of touched upon like the customer service and like interesting evals. I kind of want to share one interesting eval that we were talking about actually today with one of our customers who's working on like a customer service. Actually, many people are working on like a customer service agent right now. But the idea is like given actual like production conversations, how do you evaluate it, right? Because you have this like turn by turn that did happen. So how do you compare your agent versus this existing turn by turn conversation? And one way that we would propose was like maybe just don't, right? Like start with have your agent, but then have a GPT-4 represent the customer as well, and just seed them with the first message that the customer sent, and give them the information that the customer had at the moment, and then just let them have the conversation. And then at the very, very end, you can see like, okay, we know what the expected solution was. Did they get there? And so this is one kind of cool way where you can use like your actual production agent to see how it's doing. Use a GPT-4 like customer agent to try to like mimic what a customer would do, and then use like an LLM as a judge to see whether the final result in conversation actually has the properties that you want. And so it's like I just thought it was a really creative case that I wanted to share.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I did not mention some offline metrics, which is exactly what you're saying is what we are doing. We have a paper, it's called Conversation Assistant Answerability, for you to basically go and take a look. It's basically an offline metrics, exactly along the lines that Ilan was saying. How do you kind of create an offline indicator of, hey, my whole session was successful? Because sometimes a session can be successful. The LLM is working really, really well. The customer gives you a thumbs down just because they couldn't return the product because of policy related stuff. So it's very important to figure out where the failure is, whether if it's in the LLM or if it's in the actual kind of outcome in the business that you're seeing. And that answerability essentially is an approximation offline indicator of where the failure is happening.
Interesting. And I think that, fascinating on both sides. The synthetic, it's almost like you're talking about a synthetic customer.
A simulator.
Simulated customer. Wow. What's next? One hot, maybe hot topic that I wanted to kind of seed here before maybe giving the room a little chance to ask a question or two, is on like small, and funny, someone asked the question last night too. I was at a different AI event, like small language models, which is what you brought up, Anu, which is everything large? Is it, are we going to get to a spot where there's like, we have fine tunes or smaller language models for certain things. And so first off, do you have thoughts on that? And then we can ask, Ilan, if there's, OpenAI is working on anything and you probably can't tell us, but.
Okay, yes, I think the hybrid approach is becoming more and more, a regular kind of an approach for any kind of companies running large scale production generative AI use cases. For us, we definitely have tried a lot of OSS community models, big and small. We have tried Gemini, all these commercial vendor models, along with OpenAI, along with like Phi2, Mistral, right, Llama 2, and now the new ones are coming out, which my team is desperately trying to catching up on. But that being said, definitely we are seeing more and more promise on task-specific systems with small language models, to the point that I would like to say that this commercial models, that the way we are seeing is actually come in very handy when you're doing for a 0 to 1 synthetic data generation, evaluation, task planning, right? It's essentially, imagine it running it as an orchestrator, and you kind of then eventually could basically plug in these other small language models and kind of do something very task specific. For example, there's a standalone query optimization. With every turn in a multi-turn conversation, somebody comes and says, sports shoes. And then the model kind of asks a follow-up question, says, what size? And it says, size 5. Then the query needs to be optimized for the search, like sports shoes of size 5. And for doing that, right, we were using OpenAI, but we saw that, using something like Phi2 was equally effective. And to the point that we were able to even like replace Phi2 with a Plantify. So it depends on the tasks and what is the very minimum thing that you want to basically do. And you don't always just, we are seeing more and more is like, these LLMs and SLMs are more of a problem solver and starters. And then you just need to figure out your optimization path for your business down the line.
And it is worth noting that you started, like most of your stuff is still OpenAI, I would take it. Yeah. So starting at a spot where things are working and then maybe figuring out like what yeah.
And I don't know what is going to break. We'll know more in a quarter. So, but it's a journey, and we are seeing good promise along those.
Interesting. I might want to get, Ilan, do you want to?
I just had one thought here. It's like, I think it's very similar to like the specialization of like when you're programming, you can start on like CPU, just like writing code normally. If you know what you're going to be doing, you're going to be doing many times, and you want to really make it efficient, you'll go from CPU to GPU, right? And like you lose some flexibility, but you get more efficiency. And then if you want to go even further, you can go from like GPU to like FPGA or like pre-programmed circuit boards, right? Like you can lose a lot of flexibility if you really know exactly what you want. And I think it's very similar with like language model sizes.
Got it. Do you have time for like a couple questions? All right. Do you want to? Yeah. All right. Here.
Does anyone have a question?
Most of the conversations are happening in RAG and other things where accuracy and latency comes into the picture. Are you working on anything which talks about, like when you're talking about Flipkart, I'm assuming that the bot is not just a bot, but it's kind of representing the personality or the brand of Flipkart. How do you deal with keeping that personality consistent with what you want and not deviating, and how do you measure that?
Now you're asking me to give out my trade secrets. Okay, I'll try to optimize the answer. I think like we kind of, each of us has our own taste in cooking, right? I think each of our shoppers have their own unique taste and personalities. We do have, as you can imagine, right? We are sitting on treasure troves of data of 600 million users and consumers. Not only that, we have seen each of their pattern histories of like buying power, consumer, and personalization is something which definitely we have started our journey on. we did have personalization even on search. And now to do that on a conversational platform is an immense challenging job, because you can only do that through targeted follow-up questions. For example, if somebody comes and asks, looking for a good gaming phone, apart from asking the specific features, which again, the back end, we have pre-computed and generated using GPT-4 all the aspects, right? And all the semantic aspects of like good GPU backup, good memory, and all of those good screen and all of those stuff, right? But once you kind of surpass that, then how do you know whether to ask for, who are you buying for your son? So unless you know that person's family history and buying pattern, you cannot ask a follow-up question like that. That's the personalization. And because at that point of time, you can say, I can provide you some options with parental law, right? So it's extremely important. Or you can say, if you're buying for birthday, and then the person comes, yes, I'm buying for my son's birthday, you can cross-vertical sell other stuff for a party and other stuff. So that is how you kind of take from one product, search to the multiple, things of letting the consumer explore and research, as I was talking about. That's the discovery portion of it. So unless you start basically combining your search with your user cohorts, there are loyalty customers there. There is like, certain customers who only buy, or the capacity to buy $2 worth of sarees. And that is the most volume of our consumers. And they are top 3, tier 3, tier 4 rural users. We have figured out the entire supply chain and e-card, and I can only suggest whatever I have in that PIN code, which is coming from that wholesale kind of thing. Otherwise, I won't even be able to deliver anything to that person. So it's extremely important for personalization is extremely important for us. We cannot even operate search without it. So yes, we are doing a lot of personalization to even give the right products.
Let's do one or two more.
Thank you for your insight. My name is Nandesh Guru. I'm a co-founder of Greenscale AI. We are working on a LLM cost management solution. And when talking to our potential customers, we have seen this pattern over and over again. They are building their POC, experimental workload, over-indexing on the perfect model, prompt engineering, evaluation, makes sense, completely ignoring the cost side of things. When they take all that experimental workload to production, they soon realize that the whole cost model goes upside down for them. They're spending more money per user than they would make from them, and they have no visibility in terms of connecting the dots, get the ROI. What advice you have for them, and what can you do better?
You want to take that?
I don't know who this was for. I didn't see the person asking the question.
Were you able to hear it?
I was able to hear it.
Okay.
I can give my 2 cents. I think I think it's important to keep cost in mind when you're doing development. However, I think it's easy to if you think you're trying to be frugal and I'm gonna keep cost in mind, definitely it'll slow down development. I think the first thing you want to do is keep it in mind, but get to a spot where just ship something that doesn't scale. And then once you are able to essentially start that flywheel of getting feedback, I think slow rollouts are your friend. I think that's something that I've had to do a lot. It's obviously if you can architect something in a scalable way, do it. But if that's slowing down your development, just ship something that will work, and then scale as you go. And you might realize you can cut things here and there, but I think it's important to keep latency or it's important to keep costs in mind. But I think the most important thing is to ship something good first and then optimize for the latency, not the other way around, or cost, sorry.
One of the things which I have found, just talking about the technology, right, is it's all about tokens, right? How do you kind of control that output token and the input token ratio? Because the moment you pass 1,000 tokens, the latency is it's a reverse hockey stick. It kind of starts degrading. So it's very, very important to manage that input versus output token, and maybe break up into parallel calls. break up your system, your prompts into parallel calls. And then that way you are managing your latency as well as cost, because you are, at the end of the day, you're using, we use something else, we use dedicated servers, or, some GPUs in a cloud. And you can maximize the throughput of your GPUs in one way through parallelization. And also, if you're using dedicated servers, you can manage that through optimizing. Just technology-wise. There's a lot of other things based on the problem that you're trying to solve, but this is a trick that you have found for.
So we'll do one more question? One more question.
Yeah, so follow up, this question is, so you say you're hosting the GPU server yourself. So what's the reason for that? Because I know that for you manage your GPU, your server is very heavy on the people to manage them. And also how to maintain it's very scalable and very continuous running in its functioning. Compare if any other services can provide the comparable, very less costing. So what's the reason not to hope to like shift this load to other provider? Compare you hosting yourself. What's any consideration behind that?
It's always legal. So Flipkart is very big, right? So we do have credit lines, EMIs, and we work with many banks. So there's a lot of PII, like Social Security card. We have something called Aadhaar card. And it's very, very important for us to not kind of give out any form of PIIs. In some cases, the direction and the policy of the company is basically because we are part Walmart, there are very strict policies on consumer privacy. And that's one of the reasons why we had to invest in, we already had for training models, but we had to invest even on the, doing the inferencing side. But some of those specific tasks, it's very task specific.
Awesome. Well, I have the unfortunate job of just keeping us moving. So we have a couple more speakers, but we are going to have a networking session and some food later. So I want to make sure we get to that. So I want to thank Anu and Ilan for the awesome fireside chat. So let's give them a round of applause first. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Cool. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Well, perfect. Well, we're just going to roll right into the next one.